Welcome to another episode of Search News You Can Use with me, Dr. Marie Haynes. We're going to be talking in this episode about some significant algorithm changes. We had at least one big algorithm update in the last week, and it looks like it really was a big one. So we're going to talk about that. And then also, there were a bunch of changes to Google's quality raters guidelines. Now, I had intended to make this episode almost like a lesson on the quality raters guidelines, and I realized that there was just so much to add that I almost need to make a webinar just for that. And so we hope to do that at some point, but not just yet. So in this episode, we'll just talk about a few things that have changed in the quality raters guidelines and how they are significant in terms of SEO. So we'll get right ahead into our newsletter here. Okay. Let's talk about algorithm updates. So this date here on July 21st, all of the algo checkers showed that there was really a lot of movement. What all of these sites do is they look at organic rankings and whether there were a lot of changes. And so anytime there's a lot of changes, then these numbers spike. And now most of these checkers did not see much change on July 16th, but we had a number of clients whose analytics, so this is Google organic traffic, looked like this, where they were seeing some maybe some improvements and then a nice uptick starting July 16th. I saw this on enough sites that I'm going to call this an algorithm update. These were all sites that had been working on a number of site improvements, including how they demonstrate EAT, how they work on their reputation. There were a lot of things that these sites were working on. So it's not like I can say that there's one particular thing that changed at this time, but I do think that this was a mild quality update. However, the update on July 21st and 22nd, so it was over the weekend, seems to be a really big one. Barry Schwartz talked about seeing a lot of forum chatter. He had some suspicion, or perhaps it was some of his commenters, had suspicion that this was maybe just a mobile update. However, I have a number of clients that, let's see here. This client had increases in mobile traffic. So I do think that there was some type of mobile component. Now, this doesn't look like much, but this was reflected in analytics. And I can't show you the analytics because of anonymity. But this site saw a massive increase in desktop and mobile on July 21st. And this is one of our clients that we've been working with for a long time to just make overall improvements in mostly in the quality of their content. We're trying to make it so that if a user sees their post in the search results next to 5 other options that are all on the same topic, they'll say, oh yeah, we always want to go to this site because it produces the best content. And that seems to be working for them. So I don't know exactly what this update is about, but there were enough really significant changes that I think this was a very big update. What I wonder is whether this update is connected to the changes that we just saw and that we'll talk about in a minute in the quality raters guidelines. And if that's the case, that's kind of interesting. There's a bunch of changes that we'll get to shortly. So if you have seen changes on July 21st or 22nd, and you'd like to share those with me, marie@mariehaynes.com. I love to get emails seeing how sites have responded to algorithm updates, because the more that we look at, the more we can jump to some conclusions and say, maybe sites with this particular issue seem to be having problems. We don't always find that, but for some of these updates, it really helps us to have extra example sites. Just a little bit more information about the speed update that happened on July 9th. It does look like there were changes that happen in results in relation to this update, but I am seeing weird things still. I'm seeing sites that their page speed insight score is saying that the site is slow, and yet they saw improvements. It's really tough to say what's happening here. Glenn Gabe posted this interesting tweet. This is a site that saw big drops. This is just in mobile traffic, and they saw big drops around the time of the speed update. And this is using Lighthouse. you can see that the performance speed is not good. And so that's the way that the speed update should be working. But the problem is that it doesn't seem to be working across the board. So I do think, this was a significant date, and it's probably worth annotating in your analytics, July 9th. If you're one of our clients who we do analytics checking for you, then you'll be getting an email determining whether you were affected by the speed update or not. But we'll, if more info comes out, then we'll pay attention to that, and I'll pass that on to you. So the date has come in which Chrome is showing us that all HTTP pages are insecure. So if you see up here, I have this secure label on the site because it's HTTPS. If you go to an HTTP site and you're using Chrome 68, which is now live, then you're going to see this thing here, not secure, on this website. And it's important to know that it's not the red screen of death. That's, when you go to a site and there's a big interstitial that pops up that says, this is not safe. Do you want to go retreat to safety or continue onto this site? Those are for sites that have let their security certificate expire. And certainly you don't want to do that. But this is not what this update is about. So what we don't know is whether this is going to have an effect on rankings. The prevailing thought is that indirectly it could. So if a user is thinking of buying a product on your site versus your competitors, and your competitors are secure, that's just another sign of quality and trust. Now, we don't know whether that's factored into Google's algorithms, but I do think that most sites should be switching to HTTPS. I know I've probably frightened a few people in the past because I often give examples of sites that have issues after switching to HTTPS. I think it's important to note that we tend to see the bad cases, the ones that went wrong, and then they come to us for help in order to fix it. The vast majority of sites that switch to HTTPS do extremely well. You may see a bit of a lull, a bit of a drop in rankings for a few days, maybe even a few weeks. If you're a really large site, it could even be months. But in most cases, sites return to their normal rankings. The sites where I'd be a little bit wary about switching to HTTPS are those where you've been flirting with Google's guidelines. So if you have a site that relies on private blog network links or is using some type of tricky thing that you think is helping improve your rankings artificially, I think that those are the types of sites that can see some demotions when they get a new assessment from Google after switching to HTTPS. But for the average, if you're a business, especially if you do any sort of transactions, you need to be HTTPS now. So let's talk about Google's quality raters guidelines. These guidelines, you know that I am a big fan of them, and we do a lot of our review work now is focused on looking at here's what Google tells the quality raters to look for in terms of quality, and can we make some changes to our website so that we are seen as higher quality? It's important to note that the quality raters do not directly affect the ranking of your site. So if they see that your site, if they're happening to review it and they see that it's lower quality, they'll feed that information back to the Google engineers and they'll say, hey, we did this search for such and such, and this site is ranking, but, well, they don't actually say this. This is just the results that come in from the hundreds of thousands of reviews that they get on a regular basis. We basically tell the quality raters like a bunch, or tell the engineers that a bunch of the quality raters are saying that this particular page is ranking and it shouldn't be. And then the engineers try to figure out how to tweak the algorithm so that that doesn't happen. And so I think it's possible that the changes we saw on July 21st were implementing some of these new things that are in the quality raters guidelines. So I do think that we're going to do an episode just about the quality raters guidelines, because if I talked about all of the changes, I'd be here for another hour probably, and most of you just want to hear the Google update news. But here are some of the things that are important. So in a lot of places where the guidelines talk about high quality, they've replaced that with high EAT. And there's all sorts of stuff about, if you have a medical site, a scientific site, the topics should be written by people with appropriate scientific expertise. We've seen so many sites that have dropped on quality updates because they're trying to cover these scientific topics, but the journalist who's writing about this topic has no expertise in that area. And Google doesn't want to rank those things anymore. They want to show people articles that are written by people who actually have good expertise in that area. I thought this was interesting that for a page to be considered highest quality, they have to have at least one of the following: a very high level of EAT, a satisfying amount of very high quality main content, and a very positive reputation. And that's important. There's all sorts of stuff in these new quality raters guidelines about reputation and how important it is. And they even say in one place that if you are your money or your life site, so that means your medical, financial, legal, you take transactions, you write about something that has a big impact on people's lives, a mixed reputation, so that's meaning, some people are saying good things about you, but some people are saying bad things, is a cause for a low rating. Now, I don't know how Google measures this because really every business is going to have complainers out there. So pretty much, I don't know of any business that has 100% positive reputation. Everybody's going to have somebody who doesn't like them. And we recently reviewed a site where we went back to them in our report and said, you have serious reputation problems. Everywhere we looked online, there's people leaving negative reviews. And they said, well, those are our competitors. And I actually believe them. In some cases, I think people blame competitors and really they just have a crappy business. But in this case, I think that it actually was competitors. So how is Google going to assess that? Perhaps what they do is they look at overall, if every site in the industry has a mixed reputation, then, maybe it's not that big of a deal for some sites. So anyways, it's something to pay attention to. They've even said that even a mildly negative reputation can be a sign of low quality, which is kind of crazy. So we're going to go into greater detail. You're welcome to read the rest of this on the newsletter. And there's even more. We got to section 7 out of 20. And then we realized that, if we wait to summarize all these, we're not going to get the newsletter out this week. So we're going to have more on this next week. And again, I hope to publish some information soon to help you better understand the quality raters guidelines. Just a little bit of a plug. If you are a paid member of my newsletter, then you have access to the checklist that my team uses that we do for site reviews. So feel free to contact me for more information on that. Again, Marie@mariehaynes.com. Dr. Pete Myers noticed that there's a big increase in the number of people also ask results. So that's where, you do a search and these boxes come up that say people also ask these questions. And that's going to push down your organic listings. They'll still be listed at, if you have the number 1 organic spot, but it's underneath the people also ask box, although usually that box appears position 2 or 3. But let's say, you were right underneath that box, that's going to make your click-through rate go down. So I don't know if this is going to stay. Like 34% increase in those questions is kind of a big deal. So we'll keep an eye on that too. I've gotten a few more emails for sites that I monitor that have been moved to mobile first indexing. Pretty much every day this week, I've had some email from somebody saying, my site hasn't been moved to mobile first indexing. Does that mean there's something wrong with it? The vast majority of sites have not been moved. John Mueller says there's no public timeline for moving sites, and there's still a lot to do until we get there. So the sites that are being moved over now are very rudimentary sites for the most part. They don't rely heavily on JavaScript. They tend to have the exact same content on mobile as on desktop. And so, if you haven't been moved yet, it's probably a sign that you have, a higher quality site. Not necessarily higher quality, but a site that has more bells and whistles than a standard, static HTML site. Mind you, some WordPress sites have been moved too. So it's basically, the point is, if you have not been moved over, it doesn't mean that there's a problem. In the paid version of my newsletter, I talked a bit about one of my own sites that was, and I've talked about this before, that we had an issue where the mobile navigation is missing links that are in the desktop navigation. And immediately following its move to mobile first indexing, this site saw big drops in its main keyword. And it's hard to track because it actually saw an increase in local rankings. So the site is still getting clicks, but organically it dropped for its main keyword. It was around position 3 or so, and then they dropped to page 2 immediately following mobile first indexing. So we let that sit for almost 3 weeks, and we've just reinstituted the links. And amazingly, within an hour of submitting the site with the new links, it's popped back up to number 4 for its main ranking. Now, it's tough to say. Is that because of mobile first indexing? I'm going to publish more information on this. I really hope to have that in the next newsletter for you. But The point is, you really need to pay attention. And I do think that mobile first indexing can hurt some sites. Google's goal is to make it so it doesn't, but I think it can. Google made some changes to its guidelines on automatically generated content. So, auto-generated content. We've talked in the past about how auto-translated content is considered low quality by Google, and you don't want that in the index. This line's important, though. Text translated by an automated tool without human review or curation before publishing. And a lot of you who are watching this video are doing this. There are tons of sites where you've got, just a little bit of information that changes on each page, but basically the pages you're generating are taking information from either other parts of the web or from a database and automatically putting together this page. And what I'll tell site owners, I think Google is considering this auto-generated content, and they'll say, no, this is very helpful to users because it aggregates things in a really fascinating way. And John Mueller has said before that aggregating things in a different way does not constitute quality for Google. So if you have pages where you're taking a ton of stuff from databases or from other scraped sources, you need to make sure that you are manually curating good content on those pages. If you have something that scales out to thousands or tens of thousands or more pages, and it's relying on some type of way to automatically generate content, there's a good chance that that's affecting Google's assessment of quality for your site. So you may need to look at whether you want to trim out that information, or make it so that maybe just the one main page is indexed by Google. And I mean, every situation is different. There's another discussion in the paid version of my newsletter about a great Twitter thread in which a bunch of people talk about how they cleaned up thin content. And this is always the debate. Do you improve upon thin content? Do you remove it? And my advice is, where possible, improve upon it. But if you have a situation like we're talking about with the automatically generated content, if you have hundreds of thousands of pages that probably are considered low quality by Google, then in most cases, I'm going to recommend getting those out of Google's index and no indexing them. And we have seen some good results by doing that type of thing. If you use the Bing Webmaster API, it's still down. It's been down for a few weeks now. So it's not you, it's Bing. And we'll hopefully see that that's fixed soon. I thought that this was interesting, and I was going to just put this in the paid version of my newsletter, but I really want everybody to see it, and not for the experiment. So Webology did this experiment, and I have to say that I am not trying to put them down in this discussion. I love when people publish information about experiments they do, and then the rest of us all come along and pick it to pieces. The same thing happens when I publish something. We'll get a lot of comments, good comments, and then we'll get somebody that comes along and says, you didn't do this, so it's worthless. And really, all the information we can get online is good. So this type of testing is good. So what they did was they did some studies on broken link building. And broken link building is where you find a resource page, for example, and you can run, John Cooper has a great tool. It's called Link Miner. You can run Link Miner through the page and it'll show you where all the broken links are. So let's say this page is linking to a 404 page that no longer exists. Then you can say, hey, I noticed you were linking to this page and it's no longer live, but we have this great resource. Do you want to link to us instead? Now, one of the problems with this is that site owners are sick and tired of getting these emails, but in some cases it can work. And so you can get sites to change their links so that they don't point to competitors, but they point to you, provided you have a better resource. And in this study, Webology was able to get a number of links from these old resource pages, pointing to this post that they had on Yahoo Site Explorer, which most of you know no longer exists. But here's the thing I found interesting is I thought, well, if this site got a whole bunch of links are supposed to work pretty quickly now. Google they don't take that much time to get through the link graph and figure out, that, people are starting to link to this page now. The thing is, though, that this page doesn't rank for anything, and it didn't see any improvement in rankings. So I think that means that Google probably isn't paying any attention to those links. And again, it's not to negate the work done. I mean, it's possible that maybe in a couple of months we'll start seeing an uplift in rankings for this post. But John Mueller said something in a hangout years ago where I quote it all the time, where he said that if you're getting links from old, outdated reference pages and nobody ever visits them and nobody ever clicks on them, that maybe those links won't help you that much. So does that mean that only links that get clicked on help? I think it means that Google's just got all these different ways to figure out whether a link came from SEO efforts or whether they came because a site owner is saying, wow, this is great content. I want to link to it. Now, one could argue that these old reference pages, they did make an editorial choice to say, yeah, we want to link to this post. But I think Google may be able to recognize that as some type of a tactic. I don't think it's going to hurt them. If you're doing broken link building, keep doing it. But you may find that it's not working. And so we have, again, another article that I want to write. I think it's going to be a few months. So is just looking at some sites that we know have been paying for link building in methods that are debatable, whether they're white hat or not. And a lot of these sites have not seen any improvement in rankings since they've been doing this. So, hopefully I'll have that article out at some point because I think it's going to change how a lot of you look at link building. There was a private Facebook group that I'm in this week, and somebody was asking, hey, I wanted to get started in SEO, and somebody suggested that I start a link building company. And my advice to this person was, if you can get links by connecting with valid industry connections, by building stuff that people legitimately want to talk about that goes viral, and by just doing things to generate press for your company or your clients in a way that people actually want to be talking and linking to the business, then do it. That's a skill. And those of you listening, if you have that skill and you can get links in that way, contact me because I have customers who would like to work with you for link building. But I find that the vast majority of people who are doing link building, what they're doing is they're essentially finding as many ways to get links out there that nobody's ever going to look at. So if your main tactics for link building are guest posting and content marketing for links, then this type of stuff I'm finding is not working that well. And I know that's probably upsetting to a lot of SEO companies. I know a lot will disagree with me. And I hope to have some research and some information out there at some point soon. I wanted to bring attention to this, and most of you have probably heard this. I did not know Jordan, but there were so many tweets in the SEO community just mourning his loss, and so I don't want to get into what happened with him. It sounds like something that was tragic, and so if you if you know Jordan, if you want to help his family, there's a GoFundMe page that you can help and donate because this is a horrible time for his family. So hopefully, as a community, we can help out here. Let's talk a little bit about local SEO. So Google My Business notifications. If you are publishing new locations, then Google will now send you a notification when that's live on Google My Business. I don't know much about this. Google's testing some new price insights for hotels. So if you do any hotel SEO, you might want to pay attention to that. Thank you, Pages Magazine. That was a really nice spread with a very large picture of me in the magazine. I also have an article in that magazine for diagnosing traffic drops and some of the reasons why your traffic might drop. So I was honored to be included there. Let's just talk finally about jobs. And again, if you are in the Ottawa area, we would love to have you come work with us. So we do a lot of work, mostly doing site assessments. We look at sites in the eyes of the Quality Raters guidelines, and we do link audits as well. So we're hiring, and you can find information on how to apply at mariehaynes.com/jobs. And I think that's all that we have for this episode. So there's a lot more stuff that was in the paid version of the newsletter. Some of that is covered in my podcast. So if you are a podcast listener, you can sign up on iTunes, on Google Play Music. I think what is it? FM something has the podcast as well. You can find it at Search News. You can use or just search for Marie Haynes SEO, and you'll find the podcast there. And it's a really good episode this week. I recorded that before I recorded this one. So lots of stuff going on for me next week. I'm actually traveling to the States to deal with to do a little bit of training for one of our clients, which I'm pretty excited about that. So I won't be available for most of next week, but my team is here, and so you can reach us if you're requesting a site review, or have anything that you'd like to hire us for. And so I hope you have a fantastic week. I really hope that rankings improve and that whatever these changes are, that they're favorable to you. So have a great week, and we'll talk soon.